What's up, guys? This is Adam.
And this is Micah from Iration, and we're hanging out with Rob at Front Row Live.
Latest single, Moving Forward, just recently dropped. And once again, you guys continue to create such vibey, relaxing, chill type of music. Like, what is there a certain key to be able to consistently create music like that?
I think maybe being chill people helps a little bit. I think growing up in Hawaii, just living that kind of slower way of life, just being outdoors type people that like to spend our time getting our energy out in positive ways, I think helps. And I think people just always associate reggae and reggae sounding music with chill and laid back, and it's just a general association that people make. So I think that also kind of ties into it. But we also try to make that type of music too. We're also trying to make music.
Yeah, the dynamic of the band too doesn't hurt. We're all Southern California, Hawaii bred, and yeah, like Micah said, pretty chill people. So when we get together to create, that's kind of the vibe when we're making music.
Now, I'm always curious, like creating such music, like the music that you guys do. Does that vibey feel start in the writing process, or does that feel kind of start in the production process once you guys are putting in all the instrumentation with it?
I'd say it starts at the very beginning. I mean, it's there's so many factors that determine the music you create, and kind of like what Micah touched on, growing up in Hawaii and listening to reggae music kind of as a foundation. I think that's always going to be the starting point. So it definitely comes out right off the bat. I think Micah a lot of times will write on an acoustic guitar, and so that in itself is already kind of setting a vibe. And by the time it reaches production, the song's usually got a direction, and maybe there might be a few things we'll add, but I'd say from the very beginning, that's kind of the way we start.
Yeah, I think there's a few key factors. I mean, obviously lyrically and topically, that those things matter as well. So I think that initially that sets a tone for the song. And then as far as the production side goes, there's stuff like tempo and the way that the pocket is that also kind of help. And I think we also we kind of set the goal of trying to make stuff that had especially with this record, that had a specific sort of feel and vibe to it that was kind of put you into this like lush, comfortable, laid back feel. So I think it's kind of, they go hand in hand. It definitely starts with an intention, and then as it goes through the process, I think you can kind of help it along as well with the production.
Now, the fact that you guys had this vibe for this particular album, how important was it choosing a producer for this record, knowing that you specifically wanted a certain kind of sound? So, how did you guys come about with David Manzoor, and what was it about him that you felt it was the right fit for this record?
Well, Dave, we've been working with Dave. We worked with him for the two albums previous. We're Hotting Up and our self-titled, and I think we were all confident in the fact that Dave is versatile. I think that he knows who we are as an artist now, and having worked with him, and we write together as well. So him being a co-writer, being kind of part of the writing process, he understands kind of what we're going for. So it's, in some ways, it's not a big jump where we'd have to kind of suss out and find a producer to really fit with what we're trying to go for. He kind of already knows what we're trying to do, and we're kind of setting that, like I said, we're setting that intention in the beginning. So yeah, we like working with Dave. I think he understands the band, he understands the dynamic, he understands what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are, and he's able to kind of put all those things together, and he has a great ear. So I think we all trust his ear when it comes down to making decisions on the musical side of things. But we also are able to put our own 2 cents in, give our own production ideas, and it is a very collaborative thing, the writing as well as the production. side of it. I mean, he's definitely a producer, but we are all have our hands in on the production side of things as well.
Yeah, and like Micah said, I think the biggest factor is the comfort level now. Like, because we've worked together so much, he really does have a good grip, like Micah said, on our sound. And for me, specifically on bass, he kind of knows what I'm going for, and I find that he can push me the right ways. He'll know the direction I'm kind of heading towards, and then he tends to bring out the best in me and kind of push me into places sometimes I wouldn't really go. But using where I come from as the kind of starting point. So yeah, it's really nice, like, producing with him. We're really comfortable together, and I just find he has a good, like Mike said, a good ear. So especially for bass, he always has it sounding the way I want it sounding.
Do you guys feel like he did something different? Because, like you guys mentioned, there is that comfort level. So you kind of want to step out of your box to kind of get better at your craft. So do you guys feel that he did that in any sort of way for this album?
Yeah. I mean, I think we pushed ourselves from the beginning process. I think the writing process, we kind of pushed ourselves into styles, which we usually do anyway, but we push ourselves into styles and to feels that we don't necessarily are not necessarily super comfortable with. So, you know, songs like Right Here, Right Now, Guava Lane, that are more reggae tinged songs, that's our kind of our wheelhouse. That's our comfort zone. You know, we're all pretty confident in being able to do stuff like that and do it well. But then there's songs that are like, you know, If You Only Knew, or Fancy, or Smile, that are just a little bit different, or Coastin or Contact High, those kind of songs that are just a little bit different and a little bit, you know, outside of the realm of what we do. And I think production wise, you know, it's not a whole big change of what we do. It's just pushing ourselves musically to try to do things a little differently and to try and experiment in sounds and kind of feels that we are not necessarily super versed in, which is fun. I think that's what makes it interesting. And then when you get to play them live, I think that makes the live performance even more fun and interesting as well.
I also think too, when we go into an album, we're always listening to different music and different styles. And you take an album with Automatic, and you know, we are leaning a little bit more rock heavy and trying to kind of produce something more catered towards a K-rock. Whereas this album, I feel like it was more groove centered, and you know, you were listening to a lot of Tom Misch and kind of stuff that was just really pocket groove, and that kind of mentality goes into the album and kind of just works its way into the songs.
It's cool because, you know, you guys are able to try different sounds, different styles, but at the same time, when people listen to the music, they know it's Iration. So how do you guys, or how are you able to, you know, no matter how many different styles you try and bring into the band, you still have that signature sound? Is that something that took you guys a while to kind of figure out as you guys were creating music?
The biggest component for me is that when you make an Iration album, you're still getting Joe on drums, Adam on bass, Micah singing, MB guitar, Case keyboard, Drake on trumpet, you know, so it's like that sound is kind of comes from the players. You know, we play together so much, it's like we kind of know each other. And Joe and I, the drummer, were just kind of talking about that the other day, how a lot of when we play is we communicate non-verbally, just because we've been doing it for so long that I can kind of tell when he wants to push a beat a little bit, or, you know, when he's going to roll. And just playing with these artists for so long, you kind of get into that headspace.
Yeah, and I also think that we made this record in particular. We made it for me especially. I think it was like, let's just make songs that we actually want to listen to and we actually like. You know what I mean? And stick with stuff that feels good. And we're mostly just focused on. Sorry if you can hear the baby crying in the background, but it was mostly just stuff that we wanted to hear, we like to listen to, you know. And it was not trying to tailor it to a specific, you know. In the past we've done that, where it's like, well, we have these relationships with rock radio, alternative radio. They want to hear a single that's this, or they want to hear a single that's that, and you end up kind of tailoring songs for other people. When in this, you know, in the last few records, we just said, you know what, like, let's just make music that we want to make. let's make the songs that we want to make, tailor it to what we actually like, we want to listen to. And I think ultimately that people will want to listen to that too, because, you know, if we don't want to, if there's a songs on a record that we don't want to listen to after, you know, a while, and we get tired of it, then who's to say that other people aren't going to get tired of it as well? Like this album, I can say in particular, I've heard it so many times now, just in the recording process, writing process. And now after, you know, we've been sitting with it for a while, and I'm not sick of it. And that's a good sign for me. Like none of the songs, I don't have to skip over any songs. I don't feel like I'm like, you know, over any of the songs. And so that's a good sign. I think that is a testament to kind of the strategy that we went with on this record. And
what kickstarted the idea for this album, Coasting? Was it a specific lyric? Was it a moment in time? Was it, you know, a riff that you guys kind of wrote and it kind of like created the path for Coastin? Like what really started it for you guys?
I think it started with a couple songs in particular. I think we first started with Chill Out. That was kind of the first song that we did and wrote and then tracked. Kind of had a different feel to it than stuff that we'd been doing in previous. Then the second song that we did is called Zen Island, which is the 5th track on the record. I think it's 5. And they both had a very different feel to them. They both had that kind of soundscape type, you know, lush, vibey thing going on. And so from that point, I think those two songs were kind of the jump off of us saying like, we like the feel of these songs. Let's just kind of go. I think the key term was we were basically just calling the project Zen Island at the beginning, because we wanted to just kind of continue on with that feel and that kind of motto of pushing the songs in that direction. Obviously, they went into other avenues and did some things that were not necessarily right in that same vein, but I think that was kind of the impetus to like start the album on its way, and that was the vein that we went into to kind of set it as a different sound for what this record is. We always try to have a different sound every album, and so this one kind of started there, and then we just let it kind of naturally branch out from there.
Yeah, and the whole idea of Coastin is, yeah, it's a vibe. You know, you kind of picture yourself just cruising, slow speed, slowing yourself down, and just kind of enjoying the sights and cruising, which is something we always say in Hawaii. But coasting, that's kind of the vibe.
Do you guys remember that, you know, the first time you guys got into the studio together to create your first song, first piece of music as Iration? How different is it now when you guys get into the studio to start working on material?
Oh wow, it's really different. I think the very first, Micah, correct me if I'm wrong, is the very first recording Loyola Marymount?
Yeah.
So we did an EP over there. We had a friend that got us some free recording time, and really had no idea to kind of do any pre-production, set tempos before you go in. So the songs ended up being kind of a hodgepodge. Then we even had a whole snafu with mastering and just kind of understanding the process of making music and how you kind of translate what you do live onto a recording.
Yeah, I think we were super green in the beginning, and a lot of the, you know, Time Bomb album was a ton of trial and error and a lot of time just spent in the studio figuring things out with JP Hesser at the time at Castaway 7 in Ventura. We're just in there. We'd go there in the morning and we'd just be there all day long, trying things, finding sounds, making weird things happen, and experimenting. Ultimately, we probably spent like twice as much time as we probably needed to, but we learned a lot. You know, I think just learning a lot from just spending time in a studio. You know, there's times where I'm like running the session on you know, Pro Tools or whatever, and just learning how to record, learning the process of recording, learning how things work. And then as we did more of that and worked with Lincoln Parrish and we learned, like, working with Dave, other producers, you kind of get a feel for different styles. And now I think we're so much more efficient now. We generally, everything's worked out before we get into the studio, and the studio is basically just reserved for once everything's 100% ready to cut. You get in there, you're like, business time, boom, 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 try to knock it out as quickly as possible. and yeah, then it's done. I think we spend more time in the Dave's studio doing the pre-production side of things, and then you don't have to spend as much time actually recording. I think the days of doing that are kind of done, where you get $1 million budget and you sit in the studio for like a year and just like you do everything in the studio. I think those days are just kind of done now, and it's all about efficiency now, especially trying to live our lives as outside of there and not just get nobody wants to be in a studio for 15 hours straight. You'd lose your mind in there, and so it's just better, feels better, everybody's happier, more into the process when you're in there for a shorter period of time and you're just working, and then you can be done with it.
Yeah, we've kind of learned too, I mean, as a touring band that's out on the road a lot, to kind of use time during the gigs or sound checks to kind of suss out all those little parts before. And like Micah said, doing the pre-production and down in LA or something, just being hyper efficient and maximizing our time.
This whole year has been basically canceled in a sense due to the pandemic and the lockdowns. So how different do you guys feel about the release of this record? Do you guys see a difference as far as like leading up to the release of the album?
I guess for me, the biggest kind of difference is that we're not going to be able to do the summer tour and kind of support it. And that's usually a big kind of spike for the exposure of the album, so we're kind of going into a bit of an unknown in that sense. On the converse, I definitely feel like I've noticed there's a lot more hype. There's people want to have new music to listen to. Everyone's kind of in the same boat, and that we're not going out as much. You're kind of stuck. So I think music's a good crutch for being at home. But yeah, for me personally, I'm just kind of bummed that it's going to be until 2021 until we can really share these songs live. But yeah, I'm really stoked that it is coming out, and I've had a lot of response, especially with the song "Move Forward," but just about the timing and the message, and so that's really cool to see.
Yeah, and I think usually when an album's coming out like this, we are on the road or we're getting ready to leave, and it's really hard to put a lot of focus into the kind of promotion of the record, and getting involved into all the like minute details of the release, with whether that be lyric videos in general, promo, all these things. Usually we're so deep in getting in tour or heading out for tour that it's hard to really delve in. And now that we have the time, we're really able to be a lot more involved in that side of things, which is nice. And it also kind of is forcing us to be more creative with the way that we market and the way that we interact with the fans and push the album. I think that helps. I think ultimately, trying to use this time as a positive for the business rather than a negative, and try to find new ways to connect with fans and to find little avenues of the business that we hadn't previously thought of before is ultimately might end up being a net positive come 2021, when we actually are probably allowed to go back on the road again.
Now, last question, what excites you about this album? Is it a specific track? Is it the album as a whole? Is it the time that this album is being released? Like what is exciting you guys about this album?
I think there's a few songs in particular that are really exciting me. We've had such a good, I'd say last year was kind of our real, it was our first time kind of headlining amphitheaters, and we had such a solid set of songs that it was almost difficult to kind of swap them out. Now I feel like with this new album, there's just such a fresh injection of different kind of grooves that I'm looking forward to playing. Move Forward, especially, Guava Lane, Contact High. So I'm really excited for the album. And yeah, I think the fact that, we might not be touring till next year will give fans it'll give that time to saturate, so that by that time, I feel like they'll know all the words. Whereas a lot of times when you release an album right before your summer tour, they might not be as well known yet. So I think that'll be kind of interesting that we'll have all that time to kind of let it sit.
I'm just excited to get it in people's ears. I think ultimately the timing of it is pretty awesome, just because when we wrote the songs, it was obviously way before the pandemic, and a lot of the messages in the songs and the album in general are so applicable to the time that we're in right now, and just slowing down, being thankful for the things that you have, the simple things, nature, and all the things that we're blessed with every day as healthy people that are able to navigate the world in a normal fashion, despite the pandemic. I think that makes it for me, is what is exciting, is that we just put all this work into it, and we've been sitting on it for all this time, and it's just exciting to finally like let it fly out into the world, like the bird that you've nursed back to health or something like that, and you let it go, and it just you see what the reaction is. And from the limited reaction that we've had just from people that we've shown, or the interviewers, and the songs that we've put out, has been super positive, probably more positive than a record that we've put out since maybe like Time Bomb or something like that. So I'm excited just to see what happens when the whole thing's out there, the reaction, the fact that people in the pandemic are going to be able to really listen to the whole album and process it, and they aren't maybe too busy to listen to a whole album of music, which was kind of where the music industry was headed before, just because everybody's so busy, and the attention span with music is kind of shortening. So I'm glad. I think that it's coming right at a perfect time, and that's what excites me.